Hi again, everybody. Robin Lewis Oglesby here, and again, I'm partnered with Catherine Pickering for K&R Home Transitions Real Estate and Life Stage Home Transition Partners. If you saw our first video, we talked about my tremendous passion for this industry, and I think a lot of it was learning through some of the mistakes that I made unfortunately for our own family, and my vow to make it better for others. So we're going to talk today about living independently in the housing situation, because at some point you're going to have the discussion, it's getting hard for mom and dad to live on their own. Or if you're the mom and dad, you may say, yeah, it's kind of tough. The stairs are getting tough, things are getting difficult, maintaining the house, etc. So at some point, you're going to have that discussion, and a move may be in order. Maybe not. We'll talk about that, but something's going to have to be done. And so I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm going to tell you about my husband's stepfather, Jack. Jack basically raised my husband. He was a big jovial guy. He knew no strangers. He was just a wonderful man. And while my husband's mom was still living, she also, like my mom, had dementia and was in memory care. And Jack, looking back, Jack had health issues, but he was incredibly private, and we really didn't know what all those issues were. The one thing we did know is Jack fell a lot. And being a large man, he couldn't get himself up. And so he would have to call my husband's sister, and she would get her husband out there to lift him and get him settled. And at one point in time, his sister made the decision, it's time to move Dad in with us. And so, she said, great news, we got a room ready for you, you're moving in. And they basically had a packing party. So my husband's family was living in Southern Illinois, so we hopped a plane from Colorado and flew out there to the packing party. And they had all their friends there, we were there, and people were coming in, they were selling stuff, they were packing stuff, and basically emptying the house. And finally, after a long weekend, it was Tuesday, and we were down to his lazy boy, where he basically sat, slept, spent his day, and we had a mattress on the floor. And he was going to be moving in the next day to his sister's house, my husband's sister's house, and we decided to run errands. So we went out, said goodbye, and we're out doing our thing, and about 4 o'clock we headed home, and we decided we'd get some fast food for dinner. So we called him to see what he wanted, and he didn't answer the phone. And that's kind of odd for him, because he is never arm's length away from the phone. But we said, yeah, he's probably asleep, no big deal. So we picked up some food for him, and we got home, and we pulled into the garage, and I told my husband, why don't you go check on him, and I'll get the food and bring it in. So he's like, fine. So he went in, and I didn't hear anything from him. I brought the food in, and I called to him as I was coming in the house, and I said, how's Jack? And he says, oh, he's fine, he's just sleeping. And I just got a funny feeling. So I put the food down in, and yeah, he looked like he was sleeping, and I felt his arm, and it was cold to the touch. And so I called to my husband, and I said, honey, he's cold. And I guess one of the things when you go through something like that, you say the most simple thing that comes to mind without realizing what else it might mean. And so after I called to my husband, I felt for a pulse. There was no pulse, but my husband came running out with a blanket. And I looked at him and I said, unfortunately, he's not that kind of cold. And he had passed. And, looking back from that, I think we all agreed he didn't want to move. And we really made a huge mistake. And that mistake was we forgot what a home meant to him. We thought we were doing, the best thing in the world for him. We were helping him. We were getting everything done and sorted and organized for him, so he just had to go from one place to the other. But we forgot that that home was his sanctuary. That home was his independence, and that home was filled with his memories. That was his space, not ours, yet we treated it as if none of that mattered, and I think about that a lot today because it's about dignity and respect, and we forgot that. So, looking back on it, there are a lot of things we could have done better, and we'll talk about a little bit of that in a second. The next thing, after we, got through the first couple days, my husband's sister said, because you have a financial background, can you go through his papers, look for his life insurance and some of his records? And I said, sure, where are they? And she pointed to a cedar chest. So I opened the cedar chest up, and it was just packed with papers, envelopes, papers, receipts, all kinds of stuff. And it took me 4 days to go through everything. I did find his life insurance. It was $75,000, and he had canceled it 3 months prior because it was time for a new car. So it was just a mess. And the mess isn't the fact that he didn't have life insurance, because as a family we all came together, but it was a mess that there were so many documents, so much paper, so many things that we didn't know about. And so that was another big learning, was just the record keeping. So 2 big takeaways from Jack was, number one, understand housing and understand that it's not just brick and mortar, but it's a lot more to an individual. And you absolutely have to treat it with dignity and respect. Do you have to declutter? Absolutely. But here's a neat idea if you're decluttering, and we call it the 4-box method. And what you're going to do basically is designate 4 boxes: keep, sell, donate, trash. And as you go through the items, you're going to put them in one of those categories. But don't just say, hey, you want to keep this? Let's throw this away. Ask them about them. Ask them, tell me, how did you get this? What's the story behind this? And what it's going to do, it's going to be really a great experience, because they'll get to relive their memories. They're going to enjoy telling the stories, and it's also a way for them, with items that they're going to maybe donate or sell, to say one last goodbye to the item. And it's really a great way to treat them and their items with respect. The other thing that we did that was very important, and I truly call it a gift of love, is we created a book called The Record. And this is something that we would be honored to provide with you, and we'll give you information on that later. But we put together everything we could think of that you would need to know, if you're a senior, to tell your children, or if you're the adult child, what you would need to know to continue to care for your parent or help transition their estate. So in here we have identifiers. Going back to my dad, he was to be buried at the National Cemetery. We didn't know what his military service number was. Now they use Social Security, then it was service ID. We have that in there. We have caregiving information, so prescriptions, what your health insurance is, what your Medicare or Medicaid information would be in here. We have information about your homes, your auto, any investment property you might have, all your savings and investments, so that if we need to check on beneficiaries or where it is. We have information here on retirement accounts, and what type of account do you have, again, so you can check on the account. A lot of seniors have collections. We have it in here. My dad, and I don't know if your parents are the same, he hid things around the house. We have hiding locations in here. There were certain things that he wanted to give to certain people in the family. That's in here. We have pet rehoming. So many pets end up in a shelter because their, parents pass away and there's nowhere for them to go. So we have what your rehoming decision would be. We have information on who your advisors are. We have important documents, your living will, any powers of attorney, wills, trusts, all of that is in here. Your social media and digital footprint. Did you know that there are more Facebook accounts in existence today for deceased people than living people? And it's because their family didn't know what the passwords were to cancel the accounts. So we've gone through there. We have some final wishes in here, but it's really a wonderful place to organize. So again, if there are things you need to tell your family or your children need to be able to care for you, it's in here. And again, we are very, very honored to be able to provide this for you. That's my story for today. We're going to have 2 more stories. The next story will be about the caregiver, because again, it is a very, very tough, costly role to be in. It's rewarding. The caregiving that I did long distance is probably one of the most precious times of my life, but it truly takes a toll. So we want to talk about that. And then the final one will be, should you need to make a housing transition, what are your options and how do you find the right realtor? So thank you again for listening, and we'll be back soon.